Now, most businesses don't have a lead problem. They have a sales infrastructure problem. And that's exactly what I build. Now, if you're new here, my name's Callum. And for the last 3 years, I've scaled multiple businesses to multiple 5 to 6 figure months from building sales systems from the inside out. Now, over the last 3 years, a common issue that I've seen with owners is that they are the sales department, right? They are the closer, they are the DM setter, they are managing the whole sales process. Now, here's the issue with that. The business grows until they get burnt out, because if they're the whole sales infrastructure, when they burn out, the whole inside does as well. So in today's video, I'm going to walk you through a real case study of a founder-led business that we took over, built the sales infrastructure, and in 60 days got him to 6 figures in a month. Now, bear in mind, that's with no ads, no different marketing or new lead flow, just building a real sales infrastructure from the inside out. And I'm not just going to show you the pretty stuff, right? I'm going to strip it back on how we actually overcame that in the 60 days, how we built out the infrastructure to get us to doing 6 figures in a month. Okay, so here you have it. From founder-led to 108K cash collected in just 60 days. So we done 160K revenue. This is just in 30 days in the month of November, and 108K cash collected. Now that's just off 2 months of running the offer. When we got into the business, we done an audit and we realized the challenges very quickly. Now it wasn't a marketing issue, right? The leads were coming in perfectly. However, there was no real infrastructure, right? There was no sales infrastructure. There was no data tracking on what's happening with the leads coming through. There was no documented processes, and there was no real team structure behind it. So when we jumped in the business, we realized the bottlenecks very quickly. The founder was handling both the coaching and the sales, right? Random DM setters that he was finding in his DMs, getting them in there with no real training and no real accountability, right? There was no consistent team structure. So because of this, we quickly realized the starting point. We realized the problems and we realized the reality. Now, the problems were that the founder was actually handling both the coaching and the sales, right? Which in turn is going to lead to burnout later down the line. If he fails, the whole system fails. Also, random DM setters from Instagram. To help him out on the lead flow, he was finding people in his Instagram that weren't trained, right? That weren't vetted through a proper hiring process, which led to poor results, right? There was no consistent team structure throughout his sales process. He previously had failed sales teams coming in to try fix the problem, but there was no real structure being built. It was just about getting in more lead flow, which wasn't the problem. And growth, because of that, felt capped. Now, the reality behind that, the demand existed. The lead flow was perfect, right? The leads were flowing in and the offer was validated. People were seeing results and the testimonials and proof was there. So the problem wasn't the demand. The problem was the lack of structure. So we identified these problems. Zero documentation, right? There was no sales SOPs set in place to understand what is the standard operating procedures of this business, right? Because with any offer, it's amazing to have goals that you're heading towards to build team structure, but also you have to understand what you stand against. And that was not in place. There was no qualification, right? Through the leads that were coming through, because there were so many, which meant a lot of bad leads were getting onto calendars because of that. There was also no pipeline management, right? What happens with the leads when they don't show to the call? What happens with the leads when they don't close after the first call? There was a lot of cash being left on the table because there was no real structure behind the business. And of course, in turn, because of all those things, there was no data tracking. Data cannot lie to you, right? Data can tell you what you're doing right and what you're not doing right, and also what projection you're heading towards. And there was none of that behind it. So what did we do? We went through a hiring process, making sure that we build from the inside and build the correct team. So we hired in 3 closers, making sure that we have calendar space at all times for good leads to be booked on calendars. We then split the process into 2 different areas. We had 4 DM setters and 4 phone setters, allowing us to create 2 different funnels to make sure that we constantly have leads coming through from all angles. Now, with the hiring process, we focused on 2 different things, right? What we prioritize with the people that we're hiring and what we're trying to avoid. Now, what we prioritized was coachability. People that would be willing to come onto the floor, understand their strong points, but also be willing to understand their weaker points and learning how to improve on those things. Standards, understanding that we have standards that we want to get to, yes, and goals that we want to achieve, but also things that we stand against. For example, not tracking, not filling out data on time. And of course, long-term alignment, making sure that they're here for the long-term vision and not just here for a quick few extra extra bucks. Now, the things that we avoided was surface level experience, hype driven profiles, and sales experience without substance. So these are the areas when going through a hiring process that we heavily focused on to make sure that we built the infrastructure correct from the beginning. Now, the standards and culture. Now, this is a huge one for us because training principles, right, are SOP driven, right? Clear onboarding before live conversations. No freelancing early on, right? Having one system and one standard for everyone. In order to create a culture and standards, it's great to have goals that you're heading towards, like I said, but it's also understanding what you stand against. And because of that, you need consequences in place, right? Because when something happens once that isn't correct, that then becomes the new standard. So what we set in place to make sure that these standards withhold the test of time, we created a 3-strike system. After 3 strikes, they'd be out. It doesn't matter if they're the top closer, the top DM setter. It doesn't matter because when something happens once, that then becomes the new standard. And these 3 strikes covered in areas like adherence to training, right? So if they didn't show up to training sessions daily, that would be a strike. If they weren't following the SOPs correctly, that would be a strike, right? If they're not managing their pipeline or tracking their data on time, that would also be a strike. Now, the next thing that we heavily focused on when building out this business was data tracking, right? Tracking the core metrics of any business is so important. It's amazing that you see yourself doing revenue, but if you're not tracking exactly what's happening with that revenue and where that is actually coming from, how can you make decisions moving forward if you actually don't understand the ins and outs of your business? So some core metrics that we tracked, right, is obviously calls booked, right? Total showed, total offered on the calls, total closes, total cash collected versus total contracted, which would then give us the stats of show rate, close rate, average cash per close, and daily cash average, right? This data gave us full visibility and control over the sales operation. Now, once we come in and built these things, in month 1, it led to these results, right? So 41K cash collected, a 40% close rate, and a 58% show up rate, right? The foundation after this was confirmed, right? And this was with no financing at all. However, there was still a lot of room to grow, and we realized that. Now, we identified and analyzed after the first month what was going well and what wasn't going well. And we split it up into 3 core areas that we needed to improve on going into the following month. So these 3 areas were poor follow-up discipline, right? Low sharp rate and low cash per call capped. So there was too much focus on new leads, right? And not enough structure around nurturing existing leads. With low sharp rate, right? There was weak post booking process and insufficient pre-call preparation. And with cash per call capped, with no financing, closers were needing to be stronger with pitching and holding more discipline on the calls before actually dropping down the price. We did not guess what to fix. The data told us exactly where to focus on. And that's why I stress about building out a structure where you're tracking the data correctly from the beginning, because we would have never have known all these points without tracking the data correctly. The month 2 systems that we built out to allow us to hit that 6-figure month. On the DM setting side, DM tagging and pipeline management. Every conversation had to have a clear stage. No untagged conversations allowed, intentional follow-up scheduled, and clear pipeline ownership. Post-booking process. Setters, after they booked in a call, had to continue conversation, right? Continue and nurturing the lead to make sure that they show up to the call. Not only that, sending them over testimonials and case studies to make sure that it builds excitement and obviously urgency for them to show up to the call. And finally, the third one was closer training. Increasing the training with the closers, making sure that we're having cleaner pitching, right, stronger frame control, and increasing the cash collected per call, and only dropping price if the prospect has earned the drop down. Now, to make it clear, nothing changed on a marketing standpoint. There was no ads added. There was no new lead flow. The CTA stayed the exact same. The content stayed the exact same. We didn't magically add in financing options. It was all 100% organic, right? The only changes that we made were in the sales execution and the systems built behind it. Now, because of these changes, in the second month, we cash collected 108K with a 40% close rate, a 72% show up rate, which increased from 58% with the exact same lead volume. Now, here's the proof in the pudding, right? You can see month 1 from the picture before, we done 41K cash collected. And in the second month, we done 108K cash collected. Now, here's the key takeaway that I want you to take from this. Revenue does not grow by accident, right? It grows when standards are enforced on a sales side, systems are installed, and data-driven decisions are made. The reality, more leads does not fix a broken sales system. Structure does. And the only way to implement structure is by tracking data correctly and making data-driven decisions. So who is this for? Right, this system is designed for service-based businesses who are already doing consistent 5-figure months, where exactly like this client, you're feeling capped, right? Maybe you're founder-led, or maybe you have a sales team, but you know you're leaving more money on the table and you're wanting to reach 6 figures. So if you have a service-based business that's online, check out the link below. It takes you to our website. It gives you a bunch more testimonials and exactly who we are. And if it's something where you're interested in learning more about, click the link, book a call. We can sit down, have a strategy call, understand your business a bit better, and see how we can help you.